Welcome back this week with Trauma, Drama, and Life. My name is Ben Taylor,
I'm Kayla.
and we're super excited to be back here with you guys. Third episode, as we've been launching this new podcast, just to be able to give you a slice of our lives, a piece of like what we've been going through, what we've gone through, some of our story. We're going to work on having a link to be able to have people so they can submit questions, ask different things for us to talk about. But otherwise, we've got plenty that we can talk about on a day-to-day basis. So,
Yeah, and a
if you
twist
did,
of our humor too.
it's twist for you, yeah. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the last episode we did, we were going to talk a little bit about our story, and then we got sidetracked with counseling and was talking to you guys about like don't go to counseling with a narcissist. But anyways, check that one out. Like or rate the podcast because we'd love to be able to have this shared with a bunch of people. Just being able to give another insight into what we're kind of going through on a day-to-day basis. But still talking about the past and things that we've kind of gone through. Kind of, you want to catch us up to speed a little bit of where we left off last week because we didn't really go anywhere in the timeline, and what's going on.
Yeah, so we left off last week with like came back and we went to counseling. We kind of obviously we touched on counseling and then just kind of how it's led us to the point that we have been now. And so a lot of questions get asked like if I am still trauma bonded, how do I trust Ben? How does it even work? Like a lot of people are like, I wouldn't be able to do that. Totally 100% get that. So first off, I wouldn't be able to continue to do this if he wasn't making the consistent change. And that's what I tell people is like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him making those consistent changes because that's not the environment that I want to raise my kids in. That's not the environment that somebody that I want to be with is if I'm being constantly like verbally abused like day in and day out like I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times people have that perspective, especially depending on where they're coming from in their journey. That sometimes they have that perspective of like, well, why are you still even here?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's something that you struggled with a lot too, because for a while, you had a separate TikTok to try to be able to answer questions about all this, and you kind of got blasted a lot.
Yeah, I got blasted of like people would accuse me of like being a narcissist or like Ben's not changing or like he's
A lot
never
of
gonna change.
accusations.
Yeah, a lot of accusations and just people being very like attacking and that is not at all like not that and at that point I definitely wasn't able to take it because I was just like I was still healing. I mean, it's an ongoing healing process obviously, but then it was still like a fresh wound and
People
to
are
have
activating
people
it.
yeah and to have people like jab and jab and jab it just kept igniting the womb and I was like I can't do this and I eventually ended up I stopped it for a while and then I eventually just deleted it altogether because I was just like I don't need this in my life.
Because you had a lot of people that were just like coming at you, like yelling at you, like you're
Yeah.
stupid for being with him, basically.
Yeah, like I'm stupid for staying, like you're just trauma bonded, you're just this, you're just this, you're just that. And so like at the time I was like, well maybe I am still trauma bonded. But then like it goes into looking at like, well, what is a trauma bond? Like what is exactly and like obviously in a nutshell is you basically just continue to make excuses for them or you take the blame for everything or like whatever. And at this point, after like once Ben and I separated, that's when the trauma bond started breaking. And
Because we were
at
more
this,
like limited contact.
yeah,
we
we were very,
weren't like no contact because we still swapped Sophia back and forth.
yeah. And he would still, I wasn't gonna like not allow her to be able to talk to her dad. So he would talk to her, but we were definitely limited to contact. So it was, yeah, so that definitely like helped. And then along the lines of like coming back and like still working on myself and healing and building up my confidence and like um setting boundaries and boundaries that like there's boundaries that I've set that he has no idea about. And that's a topic for another day. We could talk about boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah.
But at the same time, like I just kept like working on myself and even though we were together, I wasn't here. It was almost like I was like one foot in the door, one foot out the door for a while.
Mm.
Um and then I think there was like just this like turning point of like I would be 1,000% okay if I had to up and leave because he broke a boundary. And that's like so there was like a flip that like switched and it kind of made me realize like oh like I'm not making excuses for him anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Like,
There's
that,
like an accountability level
yeah.
of like, and I think I remember who said it, but it doesn't really matter. But like I think it was like the idea of like, you can either leave and Ben keeps cheating, or you can stay and Ben keeps cheating. But like at the end of the day, like, you know, you can't determine whether you're gonna leave or stay regardless of what he's gonna do. Like he has to be responsible for his own decisions,
Hmm.
and being able to make sure that that responsibility lied on me versus it being like you being responsible for it, I guess.
Right, exactly. And so there was like that switch that flipped, and I was like, wow, this is like so much, like such a relief. Like wasn't making excuses for him anymore. Um, I wasn't like whatever. And I was basically coming at you like head on in one sense. So anytime that you would gaslight or manipulate, I would be like, no, like,
Right.
what are you doing? Like, I kept like coming at you, and eventually not to start like an argument, but it was just kind of
Holding me
like
accountable in that
calling
regard.
you out and holding you
Right.
accountable. Whereas like before, I would just like, in one sense, like succumb and just kind of be like, okay,
Right.
like whatever,
And I
or
think you
make
made
excuses for you.
I think you made a good point as far as like not making excuses for me anymore, because a lot of times that's what happens with narcissists. But like we can kind of like dip our toe in this and then pull back, because I don't want to like put you through a bunch of it. But like the idea of like the trauma bond that you had was excessively real. Like it wasn't like it was like when you said making excuses, I think the first thing that I thought of was just like in with like people that we knew of like defending me
Mm-hmm.
for a good while before you actually knew like the truth of me cheating, but then even after me cheating, you keeping it under wraps for a good while as well to protect me. Really was really what it was bound to. But like there's a lot of excuse making that you did, because I'd already put you through so much that you were just like, well, I don't know your whole thought process, but like I guess when you said like making excuses, that kind of made me think like, hey, like not that we have to dive into it, but just like that aspect right there of letting people know like that was something that was part of your regular life, was
Yeah.
making excuses for me.
Yeah, like it was almost like I had to protect him type aspect. So like, um, yeah, that's just like the thing that I like that comes to mind is like that aspect of like when you like just love somebody so much that you want to protect them and their reputation and like whatever, um, that you'll do whatever you can to protect that. And so I would make excuses. Um I would kind of like play off like or downplay
Mm-hmm.
different aspects or like, oh, it's not
Minimize.
that big of a deal,
Mm-hmm.
or it's fine, like I'll be fine, like no worries, like whatever. Um and eventually that just like that catches up to you, and that takes a toll.
Mm-hmm. What
And
would you say to people listening that as you're saying that they're like identifying of like, holy crap, like I did that, or like I guess even like the feeling of guilt or shame after realizing like that I did that, as far as like making excuses for an abusive person.
yeah, I think that, I mean, you're gonna battle with that, and my thing is like, obviously if you can like get help, because talking through it and saying it out loud to someone who is a safe person, even if it's just a friend that you absolutely trust, saying it out loud to somebody who is safe of like, this is like the reason why I did that. It's kind of like, in one sense, like soothing or healing in one sense, because you feel like you're crazy. And having somebody meet you in the middle and like not judge you for like thinking that, and explaining like, hey, in the moment that's what you thought was the right thing to do, or that's what you thought was supposed to happen. um yeah, I just recommend just doing something like that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of helped me, and it took me a while. It wasn't like I said it one time and like I
Right.
magically like felt better about it. It
Right.
took a really long time, and like thinking back, like it's almost like you have like this out of body experience once you get on the other side of like, wow, like I was like super crazy. And like there's things that I look back on and I'm like, why did I take that? Like why did I even um
Right.
let that happen.
Yeah, there's things that like we've talked about, and like obviously we haven't discussed on here yet, but like different things that we've talked about that has been, and a lot of stuff that we haven't talked about, even that we haven't even brought up as far as like different things that you accepted or allowed from me as far as like me pushing onto you in one sense that looking
Yeah.
back you're just like, holy cow, like you know, even I would imagine like for a lot of people listening, like even like the idea of like I feel really bad for allowing that. Was there anything that you like said to yourself or kind of like work through to try to be able to help not justify it, but I guess like heal from that?
I think it just comes down to like forgiveness, because there's like a whole aspect that I could take a whole podcast and talk about forgiveness, because it's so detrimental to your healing. Um and I think you have to start by forgiving yourself, because like you have to realize that like when you're walking through something like that and you're being like emotionally abused like day in and day out, especially like with Ben, like he's a covert narcissist. So I didn't really have like people that I could talk to, because like obviously on the front aspect, like people like thought he was amazing. Like they would have not ever guessed like that this was going on behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And so I had to like come to the realization of just like forgiving myself, and like almost like owning that this is a part of my story that God has placed in my life. And I don't understand, like at the time I didn't understand why. I didn't know how God was going to use this. I didn't know like any of that. And I think since talking to so many people and like meeting people and things like that, they've said like I've been an inspiration to them, or like we have helped them so much that that's like, okay, like did it suck going through all of that? Absolutely. Would I do it again? No.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that it's just yeah, just forgiveness. Like forgiveness of yourself is where you start healing, and then trying to find someone who can be like that safe place to like talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something there with the idea of like you're an inspiration for some people, but like I guess share a little bit how that could also be, you want to inspire people to heal,
Right.
not string people along with hope, right? As far
Yeah.
as like being in like in a relationship with an abusive, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, like any type of like abusive relationship out there. What do you feel like you could say that would help people like understand where we are versus like where they might be in the process to not give people I guess more hope that we're sitting here doing a podcast and I'm a narcissist and you're not, like
Yeah.
what would be something from your perspective, because I can say stuff from my perspective all day, but like at the end of the day, like a lot of people want to hear from you in that regard.
Yeah, so I think for me is it goes back to, obviously I had no intentions when we separated. I touched on this I think in our first podcast. I had no intentions of really coming back. And it just came down to him actually like 100% changing, because I think there's multiple times that in the past he's going to say I'm going to change. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Like I'm going to be better. And it would last for like a day or two, or 2 weeks max.
Mainly when I got caught.
Yeah. And
I don't think
or
there was a time when I didn't get caught that I was like, oh, I'm going to change randomly.
yeah, I mean, I think other than that, other than the time that you thought that you were like a sociopath or something like that, you were
Right,
like
like
I
when I
just want to
like
be better.
when I asked that question,
Yeah.
but that was like quick, and then I made sure to
Right. It was
gaslight
just
you and
like
everybody else that it wasn't.
it
That
was
it
just
wasn't
like
true.
a
Right,
little blip in time basically.
right.
Like the next day you acted like nothing happened. So it
I
was kind
actually,
of
looks like random side note. I don't remember what I was looking up on my phone, but I was looking up something on my phone,
mhm.
like a keyword. I like looked up a keyword, and it pulled up a photo, and it was actually a snap that you sent me 2 years ago. I don't even know what keyword I used to pull it up, but like it was a snap that you sent me two years ago, and in the snap, it actually says like you'll be happy to know that so and so thinks you have traits, but you're not a narcissist either. And so like it showed like in that moment that like the people that you were talking to that I'd already like communicated to, like, hey, by the way, like, she thinks I'm a narcissist. Like, that's crazy. I'm not, right?
Mhm.
That was already something that was there that even like in your communication to me is something that I saw, I think it was literally just today that I was like, oh crap. Like, I forgot about that, but also like
Mhm.
it was just like evidence in one sense of other people that were saying stuff to you. Because the person that you were referencing to, like later, like once I became more aware and once they became more aware, like, also knew I was a narcissist. So, but it was
Yeah.
kind of like interesting how like that part was like manipulated too.
Yeah. What were you?
Sorry. Anyways, so like I sidelined on some of that, but like the idea of like um how to make sure that people just don't get hope from seeing you and me or
Yeah.
hearing us since we're on audio right now, but like how to not get hope or what they should be looking or considering in their relationship versus latching on to the idea of like maybe my husband will be like Ben or maybe my wife will change, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Um, I think that it's there was something that I heard, and it kind of goes along with what I'm gonna say is like you have to pick your hard. You have to pick whether you're gonna leave, it's gonna be really hard, or whether you stay, it's gonna be really hard, because it is very, very, very rare that there is something like this that happens, like
Mhm.
where a narcissist actually like changes and heals. And I think it came down to, for the longest time, like my hard was, I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna put my head down and I'm just gonna like face this head on and like I'm gonna get through it. And it was just like there was a time, and somebody said like you will choose that hard until that hard becomes like it's where your safety is completely like gone and you don't feel safe to even talk to that person. And that is when we decided to separate, because it was any type of communication that happened between us just turned into an argument. It could literally be like, how was your day? And it would turn into like some type of argument, because I could say how I had like a frustrating day, and then he would try and come and one up me. And I was like, this is not how a relationship is. Like, this should
Because my
not,
day was always worse than yours.
right.
Right.
This should not be like the case. This should not be happening. Like, what is going on? And so I was like, I don't want this for a daughter
Mm.
or any future kids. Like, this is not the environment that I want to raise my kids in. And that is when I decided to leave. And he was in therapy at the time. And I was like, yeah, I can see that you're in therapy, but obviously it's not like helping. Like,
Right.
I mean, like at that point, like I didn't care what I said, like, because nothing that I had said, nothing that I had like done or whatever was having him quote unquote change.
Was having an effect.
Yeah, having an effect. And so I think there was like small, teeny, like millisecond, like blips of change, but it wasn't significant enough for me to be like, yeah, you're gonna be healed from this, or whatever, and
Right. Yeah, no,
get
that
better.
that totally makes sense. So I'm gonna ask you about the trauma bond, but like just to sum up that one, just to give like people like an idea, I think like the biggest thing was, go off of the actions, not the words. Like the only reason why, we even got back together was because of changed behavior. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
because I said I was going to change, because I said that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge aspect of looking at the behavior, not that. So like, if you're in a relationship and you're struggling and you're wondering like, do I stay? Do I go? Read that book. That's a good book too. But like just going through like the idea of like, what do I actually do? Go off of behavior, go off of like their actions, not their words at all, ever. Because like their words will lie and manipulate a million times over, but their actions are what you really want to see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was like the big aspect there. I think like one of the things that people asked a question about that I want to make sure we touched on, since we didn't get a chance to last episode, was the idea of like, are you still trauma bonded to me, or like what does that look like in your life now?
Well, I touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but
Oh, that was like 20 minutes ago. So,
again.
so yeah, you can wrap it up that way. If they didn't hear at the beginning, then they can hear it now. That's fine.
But yeah, no, like I think at this point, like there isn't any trauma bond, just because I don't make excuses for him anymore. I fully know that he is like a narcissist, and like, yes, has he changed? Yes. Like, is he 1,000 times different than what he was last year? 100%.
Still a lot more work to do, though.
Yes, there's still obviously a
I'm
lot
not
more.
perfect, even though my narcissistic tendencies wants to say that I'm perfect all the time. But I mean, that's always been the case.
But I also I know the boundaries that I have set, and would it be hard to walk away? Yeah, of course, that's any relationship. When you end it, it's going to be hard to walk away. But I don't have an issue with packing up my stuff and leaving if he breaks any of the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is huge for me because I've never had that peace or that sense. And I don't think about it often. Like, I just know that, like, I know that I have respect for myself and for my daughter, to not have her be in that type of, like, relationship. I don't want her to think that that is okay at all, because it's not. And so, yeah. Just to kind of, like, wrap it up, like, that's, like,
Yeah.
I don't believe that I am. I mean, I have confidence that the trauma bond is, like, broken, because compared to what I was, and just thinking back, like, I was like hella trauma bonded. Like, there's no other way to
I mean, once
explain it.
I guess you could say, like, weak and addicted.
Yeah. It was really, really bad. And, like, thinking about it sometimes, like, not triggers me, but it brings up, like, this anxiety of, like, why did I let myself get that bad? Because there's some things that I often, like, will have, like, flashbacks to, and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, what?
Right. Yeah.
What possessed me to do that?
Right. No, yeah, I think that's true. I think, like, it's kind of like the idea of, like, you have your boundaries set, and you have the things that you know that I can't cross on, and the things that you know you're not going to cross on, as far as just, like, what you're going to allow. And so it's almost like, I don't want to say, like, a backup plan, but it's almost like the idea of, like, hey, like, it's your line in the sand. It's your boundaries of, like, hey, if you cross this line, this is going to happen. And then resigning yourself to understanding, like, hey, if that happens, then this is the result. And so you don't have to be worried about if it happens or not. If it doesn't happen, then you're like, hey, I don't have to worry about it. And if it does happen, then you're like, hey, I already know my plan. I think, like, that's key, is, like, understanding the boundaries and the consequences, and being okay with them. And then obviously, I mean, we're still, like, growing, learning, changing, healing, building trust and things like that. And that probably, like, helps, but it also doesn't change that the boundary's there.
Right. And yeah.
But yeah.
I had another thought, but I forgot.
No, that's totally fine. So, well, anyways, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you have a chance, share this with a couple other people. Rate the podcast. This is the only place you can find it, is just audio. And we're super excited to bring this to you once a week. Thanks so much for listening, and y'all have a great day.
See you next week.